This is the Lotus Bloom Podcast. And here's your host, Morgan Wylie.
Welcome to another episode of the Lotus Bloom Podcast. I'm your host, Morgan Wylie, and this is the segment, It's Time to Write. I'm sharing with you my process of writing a new book from beginning to end, where I can show you some tips and tricks and things I've learned along the way and fun aspects of writing that not everyone gets to see. I'm also excited to bring on some author friends of mine who are going to share parts of their processes as well. So I hope you enjoy. It's time to write. In today's episode, we are talking about inspiration. And I am working on, as I mentioned before, book 5 in my Age of Alandria series. So while I still obviously need inspiration when I write, I don't necessarily need to do some of the initial prep work, such as naming characters or naming the lands and creating those places, because they're already done. So if I was starting over with a new book or a new series, this would be a step in the initial part of writing the book that would be very important as far as inspiration goes in the creating of this world before I begin to write, such as naming my characters and creating the plot line, which we've talked about already with the outlines. Today, I have 2 authors who are going to share some of their inspirations. I have author E.J. Fechenda, who's going to share how she names her characters. And then I have author Tish Thawer sharing her inspirations behind some of her different book series where she came up with the names and plot lines. So before I give them the floor, I thought I would share a few of my inspirations behind naming my characters. If you follow me on Instagram at mwyliebooks, I shared recently the inspiration behind the series, The Age of Alandria, and how I came up with the initial storyline. So if that's of interest to you, head on over to Instagram and you can find that video in the IG video section. I also created some videos sharing the inspiration behind each of the covers. Tish and I share a love of nature and trees, and I share how significant the trees in Alandria are, that they are on every single cover. They, in the story, are a character unto themselves. They are ancient and alive. I do have some dryads in the story that are actually characters, but then the forests together are characters also. That said, I wanted to share with you today how I named some of my characters. In Alandria, it's an epic fantasy, so it's another realm, and in this realm there are territories. So for example, in the territory of the shifters, now these are shifters of all kinds, but I wanted their names to have kind of a little bit of a rougher, short and to the point sound. So for example, Shell, who is my main character Kaylee's best friend, she is a shifter, and her name is really Shelna Marzen, and her father's name is Rayalt Marzen. And one of the shifter leaders, his name is Landon Wassell. So see, they all have kind of a shorter, almost blunt sound to them. Whereas many of the fairies who come from the territory of Faranmar have a little bit more of a flow to their names. For example, Malena and Deal and Dagon Waethni. Then my elves have a similar flow, but they do have a different feel to them. For example, Finland Talain, and we have Aurelius Zolnis, and we have Adon Sayelith. And then with my main character, Kaylee, in the mortal realm, her name is Kaylee Johnson. And as she's looking to discover who she really is, where she comes from, who her family is, when she is in Alandria, she discovers there's more to her name. And I don't think I'm giving away too much here, but I like her name. It's pretty, so I want to say it. So her name is Kalena Iliathiel Saeliath of Lithnai. So that's a mouthful that you don't want to say more than once. But there it is. So my point to all this is that I tried very purposefully to have each of the different supernatural races have a different sound to their name, and each of their territories have different sounds to their names, and the words I've created in their languages have different sounds as well, and a cadence and a rhythm to the way they're pronounced. So maybe someday I will get around to pronouncing them all for you. I'll also add here real briefly that each of their names, at least of the main characters, their names have meanings, and those meanings have to do with something about their character or their future or their destiny. So I'm not going to share those because I'm afraid at this point it will give too much away if you have not read up to this point yet. I'd like to give the floor to EJ. She's going to share about how she names her characters. And then Tish is going to jump in and she's going to share her inspirations. Take it away, EJ and Tish.
Hi, I'm E.J. Fechenda, author of the new Mafia trilogy, which is a new adult mafia romance series. I also write paranormal. I'm the author of the Ghost Stories trilogy, as well as a contributing author to the Havenwood Falls Shared World series. A lot of readers ask me how I come up with my characters' names, and coming up with a name is one of the first steps in my writing process, and it's not something that can just be arbitrarily picked out of a hat. You know, you have to really consider who the character is going to be and make sure the name matches their personality, or it can tell about family history. For example, if they're a junior or a senior. I have two Havenwood Falls characters who are lion shifters, Riker and Orion Pride. And so not only is Pride a matching to their personality, because they are very proud, but it's also a play on a lion's pride. So I am definitely a huge name nerd. I never thought I would be, but I am. Name nerd right here. So whether in conversation or reading an article, if a unique name jumps out at me, I'll write it down. I used to be a database manager, and that database contained over 1 million names. I was constantly looking at names, and I had a separate document on my computer where I could just copy and paste anything that jumped out at me. And that was like name nirvana. And I still reference that list to this day. It was a gold mine. So a character's name definitely makes a difference, and if they have a nickname, that's even better.
Hi guys, this is Tish Thawer. I'm the award-winning best-selling author of the Witches of Blackbrook series. I write mostly YA and new adult paranormal romance, and I'm so excited to be here. Morgan, thank you so much for asking me to come on the Lotus Bloom podcast. Today I will be talking about where I get some of my writing inspiration, because it's definitely random. I think everywhere you look can be something inspiring or hold an idea that just takes a little bit of spark to turn into something really unique and wonderful. And I get my inspiration from a multitude of places. For the Witches of Blackbrook series specifically, it came originally from the song Love the Way You Lie by Rihanna and Eminem. That part where it says, just gonna stand there and watch you burn. I just had this absolute vision of my character, Karina, aka Trin, just tied to a stake and just basically saying, no, you're not going to burn me, and came up with the magical concept of her casting a spell that transported her and her sister's souls through time so they could escape that horrible time in history. And another place that I got inspiration, strangely enough, I was walking by my mom's bookshelf and she had a large, thick paperback book on the bottom shelf, and I couldn't see the top word, but the bottom word said in this really pretty scrolling font, dark. And oddly enough, the name Abigail just popped into my head. And so that's how I got inspired to write the story of Dark Abigail, which is the second book in my Women of Purgatory series. Another fun one is when I woke up from a dream, I had the first title of my Rose trilogy book just pop into my head, and within minutes, I knew the story, I knew the characters, and the titles for book 2 and 3. And I call that my Twilight moment. I know Stephanie said that she dreamt up Twilight, and that was mine. So that was a fun one as well. And I think another of my favorite is the inspiration I got when I was driving my son and my niece to school when we lived in Arizona, and it was dark out. Arizona doesn't change time with daylight savings, and so that shift in schedule had us on the road before the sun had risen. And it was so funny because my niece said, "You know what, this should be illegal. We shouldn't have to go to school when it's dark." And I said, "Aha, there it is." There's that moment where I was like, this could be something. So that actually turned into my book Handler, where they have one law, which is you could not go out at night. And so, yeah, those are just a few of the inspirational things that moved me to write some of the books that I've written. But on a day-to-day basis, I wake up and I look out my windows, which I live in a very isolated place that has just greenery and flowers and forest and trees, and I'm extremely drawn to the trees and nature and stuff. And so, just giving thanks in the morning and looking out my windows and having my coffee with my husband, all of those moments, I just take a minute to really kind of take a deep breath and take in the magic of the world around me on a day-to-day basis. And that's always helped me come up with something fun and unique as possible, to put my own twist on it. And it's something that I just absolutely love to do. So I don't think that'll ever change. And everywhere I go, I look for inspiration to be that next spark to become my next book. So I hope any of those ideas might be inspiring, or at least entertaining as to where an idea can come from. So again, thanks, Morgan, and keep on writing, guys.
Thank you so much, EJ. I love using name databases as well. I've also used baby name books, and I do searches on the internet. A lot of my names for Alandria have some Irish or Gaelic or Celtic background with sounds, and then I kind of tweak them to make them my own. But I love using outside resources, so those are always fun. And thank you, Tish, so much for sharing your inspirations. As I mentioned, I love using nature for inspiration as well, but really it is all around us if you just look for it. You can find both EJ's and Tish's books on Amazon. They are both on Facebook. You can find EJ on Instagram at EBUSJANEUS, and you can find Tish at Tish Thawer, TISH THAWER. I will post those links as well as links to their websites or Facebook pages in the episode notes. So go check them out. Thanks for listening to our inspirations. And for now, it's time to write.